Thomas.
What's up,
Percy.
guys and girls? Today we're going to be playing a kids game. It's called Thomas and Friends Track Builder. It's by PBS Kids. I've never played this before, and it seems like we're starting with choosing
Percy.
screen. Now,
Thomas.
in this video, I will not just be playing the game. I have to do a huge rant on Professional League of Legends esports. Now, this is an organization. It's one of the biggest esport communities in the world, and people are making a living playing this game. Now, people ask, will it become something that's, recognized by mainstream society as an actual sport and get reputation and all that stuff? And I personally think that it will. However, I think there's one big issue. The fact that a lot of people playing this game are still not acting professionally. If you want to be treated and recognized as professional, which if you've been in the League of Legends esports community
Thomas.
or any esports community for that matter, you want, this is something that's constantly being talked about in every
Percy.
single
James.
esports community almost every month. They always want every piece of recognition that they could, so that they can be recognized as an actual sport. I'm going to choose James.
Choose a
Now,
background.
Here's the issue. If you want that to occur, you have to be professional. And you can bet your ass that they want to. If you go to any of these communities, every single time they are mentioned by ESPN or anything that, is borderline realistic in terms of, being accepted by mainstream, they latch onto that and they promote it everywhere. Oh, we were mentioned on esports. And that's great, and it's really awesome that there's a lot of well-known people stepping forward from quote-unquote mainstream that have been recognizing it.
Make your track.
NBA stars
When you
that
have
are,
finished,
talking about
click
how they love to play.
all done.
Jeremy Lin is one of them. He loves Dota. And then there's a white NBA player who loves League of Legends. Play this game. I get it. So the point
All
is,
done.
if you want that to occur,
make your track.
you have
when
to
you
be,
have
at the
finished,
very least,
click all done.
willing to be professional. Now the issue is that, especially for a lot of Western teams, they're not professional. They, and arguably you can't blame them, because guess what? These are gamers, and they pretty much have spent their lives developing bad habits, things that don't push you towards success. You spend all this time, 8 hours a day, playing video games, and you're very unproductive. You don't want to do anything, no work ethic. All these sort of things come together. So what I've been hearing is that a lot of these professional teams, they have issues, issues that should be solved, should not be tolerated. How do you expect people to let's say all done. How do you expect people to treat you professionally if you can't even arrive on time for practice? If you're constantly late because you overslept, because you played video games all of the last day. Now, I'm a gamer myself, and I understand it. It's not just playing video games. It's a lot of scrimmages, a lot of beating your head against the wall because you lost the game, analyzing everything. But nonetheless, you still get to play video games for a living. Let's not, discount that.
Stop.
So
all done.
The whole thing about, being late to practices, not showing up on time, that's the essential skill. And, it's obviously easier said than done.
Print
because I've been late
videos.
myself.
Stop. Pick your fate. Choose a back. Build your track. When you have finished, click all done.
To hear that it still happens, okay, that might have been, plausible 4 years ago when, competitive League of Legends was basically guys in t-shirts playing video games in a small room for the world tournament. Now, when you have stadiums full of people who are cheering on you, that stuff does not fly. And so I find that very interesting. Now, from what I've seen, the Asian teams, generally speaking, especially Korea, they're probably the only ones who really take it seriously. Like, still to this day, like they're the only ones, and it's partially due to their culture and infrastructure. But you know, lately I've been surprised. I've been seeing interviews from Koreans, and basically from what they've been saying, it's still not really a culturally accepted thing to play video games for a living, despite the whole culture there being, you know, much more suited to it, to the point where if you are a StarCraft, you know, top professional player, you're pretty much like you're a superstar, kind of like a basketball player or soccer player or football player. So that's interesting. However, still, you know, some of the top players there making tons and tons of money, you know, based off interviews, their parents were still against it. So it's
You are really useful.
Now, the issue,
Thomas
though, is
thinks you
that-
are really useful.
So the issue is that this is an issue that has to be solved, and you know, it kind of repulses me that there's still a lot of like horrible, non-professional behavior, horrible attitudes, people just being like they're not grateful for what they have. I mean, there's some players, they truly are, they understand what they're doing, and they understand how hard it is. Others, you know, it just feels like they're not grateful for what they have. And I get it, it's very stressful, it's very tough. Most people don't know how hard it is. To be a professional League of Legends player, you have to be in the top 0.001% of the 0.001% out of the millions who play. And then once you actually get on a team, the stress is just unbearable. The amount of practice you have to do on a daily basis, you know, 8 to 12 hours, all that sort of stuff. Now that's just going to be crazy. It's incredibly ridiculous. And ultimately, I personally think that
Choose a
things will iron
background.
themselves
Build
out. Now,
your
what I mean
track.
by that is
When
that,
you have finished, click
like
All Done.
I do think that because there's so much demand for this, we will move towards something more professional. Similar to how American football or soccer was once kind of just like whatever. You have these weird hats. There's no real sports coverage. Now, you know, the equipment's upgraded. They have professional facilities, personal trainer. It's more of a recognized pastime, and that will occur over time. Kind of how, like, you know, some people argue, like, you know, no matter what, these things will come about. But one could say that's not always true. Like, some say that if Martin Luther King didn't do his thing, we would still eventually move towards equality. Is that true? Others think no. If people didn't, you know, speak out and be activists for something and speak up and say, I don't like segregation. I don't like the fact that the esports community is not really respected as an actual sport, then nothing's going to be done. So who knows? I do think, though, you know, based off a global perspective, from what I've seen, I personally think that it's headed there anyways. No matter what anyone does, we will eventually move to a state where, you know, those who are unprofessional, those who are not like at the top of their game will be siphoned off by competition at the end of the day, regardless of what happens. So that's just something that occurs. What the hell is this? A rock? That's just something that freaking occurs. And, you know, it's still nonetheless, how do you put water over tracks? That makes no sense to me. What if I put a house over the water? Okay. And grass over the house? Okay. And a boat over the grass? Huh. It works. So, that thus ends my big rant, really. I have to say something. Personally, I think the esports community will go far. In 50, 100 years from now, it's headed there anyways. I mean, I think human civilization will be around for a long time, thousands of years. So in the grand scheme of things, this is just the birth of esports. Over time, however long it takes, we will get there. And in fact, in certain ways, we are already there. In the span of maybe 3 or 4 years, League of Legends went from something where, you know, professional casters were guys in t-shirts casting the game while it was played at a table, to, you know, now they're in almost full-fledged suits, sitting at marble desks, casting this thing and streaming it live to millions of people. However, I do think there's a long way to go. I recently just read an article about the Super Smash Brothers competitive scene and how barely anyone's making any money from it, even if you're a professional player. And that is almost ridiculous to me, because guess what? Like, Super Smash Brothers is like an iconic game and one of the most recognized games of all time. It's one of the first games I ever played on Nintendo 64. It's a game I've kept up with for a long time. So I found that very incredible. The whole article was basically saying how, like, no one was, you know, no matter how hard they tried, it was just like impossible to make even close to a living off of it. And so I was very surprised about that. And so I would say, you know, ultimately we're headed there anyways. However, just from what I've seen, and based off how, like, the market still is, there's just certain things I don't like about it. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of the owners to these professional teams, a lot of the players, a lot of the conduct is just very, it's not something I like seeing, because they're goofing off, they're doing unprofessional stuff, they're making stupid decisions, you know, people aren't saying professional things, and they're just doing stupid things that are screwing over multiple aspects of what they're doing, because they're still kids. Now, I'm probably being too harsh in certain areas, because for someone who has no idea about the esports community, I mean, there's a lot of huge things going on nonetheless. I mean, top tier teams are being sponsored by very well recognized tech companies and brands, from Coca-Cola to Geico to Samsung. All these people are coming forward, recognizing the value in this, recognizing that there's a lot of eyeballs in this area. So honestly, it's so exciting. I wish I was a part of it somehow. I wish I had, like, my own company behind this, but I don't. It's interesting. It may be worth exploring, but it's just very exciting right now with the whole esports community right now. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's like, I wonder where it's headed. And right now, I feel like the Koreans are the only ones who really have this whole thing, you know. Oh shit, what is this? What a helicopter. So yeah, the Koreans are the only ones who have this down right now. And even then, they have a long ways to go. I'm personally excited for the whole scene. And it's really exciting for me to see, you know, a ton of people coming out and talking about it. And for someone who has no idea about this whole thing, it's incredible, because you literally have not only all these well-known brands coming forth and sponsoring these teams, giving them jackets, equipment, all sorts of stuff. You have these, you know, big, well-known teams becoming brands and being well recognized in certain communities. Now, it's weird how it works, because the thing is that it's a niche thing still. It really is. You know, despite, like, you know, give or take, it's very exciting to see, you know, every now and then a professional basketball player in the NBA, or a professional American football player, or whatever else, come forth and talk about their love of esports and how they watch the games and so forth. In fact, recently there's been quite an influx of people that's really surprised me about how much they knew about the scene. Despite all that, it's still very niche, and I mean, you don't need to go far to realize that. Despite there being, you know, over 1 million people who, you know, who keep up with it on Reddit and all this stuff, it's still kind of niche. Let's just be frank here. There's a recently an interview done on a channel called All Chat, and they basically went around the city and they pretty much asked people what they thought about video games and stuff, and specifically League of Legends. And it was embarrassing, to be honest. Like, a lot of the people there, they ridiculed it. They were like, 99% of them, it didn't seem like any of them even played video games. And there's people like making fun of it and immediately just talking about World of Warcraft. Honestly, it's one of those things. So, you know, despite all that, I feel like this sort of stuff always happens, and we're still progressing and moving there. And, you know, ultimately, it doesn't matter. I personally don't think it matters if it does get, you know, recognized. Who cares? If you love the game, just play the game. Enjoy it. And I personally, it's obviously going to be awesome if I was part of the scene, if I was more recognized from, you know, people you respect or companies or big things. But I'm not like part of the organization or whatever. So for me, I don't think it matters that much. Sure, it may be a good ego boost, and it's probably great for the industry. But, you know, I feel like, you know, if you love the game, just play the game, enjoy it. Don't make it that big a deal, you know what I'm saying? And oh my goodness, look at this thing. Let's see what happens.
You've made a splendid track. Percy thinks you are really useful.
What the hell? I don't even see the thing. So ultimately, what I'm saying here is that basically we have a long way to go. Oh, I see the train now. We have a long way to go. We've come a long way. Other video games out there have a longer way to go. Some video games are not meant to be competitive. They're very clearly meant to be these entertainment type platforms where you play through the whole campaign once and you're done with the game. It's a great story. Other games like League of Legends is intentionally made to be competitive. And
Play it. Choose an engine. Choose a background. Build your track. When you have finished, click All Done.
And obviously there's going to be big corporations coming out, big companies that they're making their mark. Let's just be frank. There's TSM and CLG. These companies, or these whatever you want to call them, organizations. I don't know if I want to call it a business, because technically it is a business, but it's more so like just a brand. These things are huge. Like, for someone who's not in the gaming industry, they're not really well recognized. But in the gaming communities, these companies or teams I mentioned, they are so huge, so well known. There's so much brand recognition, loyalty, fan adoration to these brands. And it is just incredible what they have been able to accomplish. And like all niche communities, which I find very interesting, but a lot of niche communities, you know, despite them being very niche, some of them may only have 1,000 members in them. But in that group, you know, the top of the top, the celebrities in those communities are treated as real celebrities. And it is really fascinating to see this. Whatever niche I follow, whether you're playing tennis, there's some like tennis teacher who's like a superstar celebrity in his tennis community niche. And there's, you know, believe it or not, you know, sewing community, and the chief sewer in that community who sews and like knits, she is like a well-known celebrity in her niche. And the same thing holds true for TSM. And here's the thing, the niche is not so niche anymore. You know, at the end of the day, we are all communities in one sense or another. And ultimately, what I've found is that I'm very excited for what League of Legends holds. Because guess what? You know, recently, give or take, there's been a few notable instances of well-known people coming out and displaying incredible knowledge about the scene and just being, for lack of a better word, fanboys for it, which really surprises me. At the same time, though, you know, It's such a weird and unique type of sport, if you want to call it that, because there are pretty much people who are, like, at the end of the day, they're gamers, they're kids, and some of them are professionals, some of them are not, and they act very childlike because they are kids just playing video games and broadcasting that to the internet, and they do irrational emotional stuff, and I don't like it. I just think it looks bad for you. Like, put aside all the other stuff, forget professionalism, but it looks bad for you, let alone the whole industry as a whole. So I personally don't, I mean, this is a problem that doesn't really come up in other sports, and I feel like it's not really, I don't think it will ever be called a sport for good reason. It's its own unique category, and it's called esports. And you know, some people want it to be recognized as a real sport. I don't think it will, because of like weird stuff like this occurring that doesn't occur in other sports can't occur in other sports, and just like the whole dynamic of the game. Like, generally speaking, do you call chess or checkers a sport? No, it's a strategic game. Sure, you tend to use your mind a lot, and it has a lot of competitive aspects, very similar to esports, but it's not an actual sport. So that's all I gotta say. I mean, I could rant about this for a long time more, but that's all I gotta say in this video. It's getting pretty long. There's a ton more I could talk about, but I'm not going to, because I don't really have an audience for it. It doesn't seem like many people are interested in hearing me talk about it. If there are, I mean, I could talk even more about this. There's so much more to be said. But that's it for that. See you guys later.